Welcome to a world where shadows hold secrets, and every whisper could unravel a tale of darkness. Tonight, we journey into the unknown, exploring the chilling depths of human nature and the twisted paths of those who walk among us. Are you ready to confront the sinister, the inexplicable, and the unimaginable? Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind some of the most perplexing and haunting crimes ever recorded. Brace yourself, what you discover might keep you up at night. Let the story begin.
In 1874, Christian K. Ross, a wealthy man with a very prestigious social status, lives with his family in their large stone mansion on East Washington Street, in Germantown, a suburb of Philadelphia, and within its borders. At that time, his family consisted of his wife and 7 children, namely Strongton, Harry, Sophia, Walter, Charlie, Mary Ann, and Annie. Charlie Ross, who was 4 years old, was a fat boy with long curly blonde hair. His appearance, intelligence, and nature made him loved by everyone he meets. His brother Walter, who is 6 years old, was his constant companion. On June 27, 1874, 2 men passed by the Ross mansion in a horse carriage, and when they saw Charlie and Walter playing on the nearby sidewalk, they stopped and, having given the children candy, began to talk to them. These 2 men continued to pass by daily after that, always talking with the children if they were in sight. At noon on July 1st, they stopped again, and Charlie Ross asked the 2 men to go on a trolley tour and also asked them to buy candy and fireworks to celebrate the upcoming Independence Day. The strangers gladly agreed to fulfill his requests, and Charlie and Walter were taken to the wagon. When they had covered a certain distance, Charlie asked why they did not stop at a candy store, but the 2 men told him that they were going to Aunt Susie, where they could get a large amount for 5 cents. When they reached the intersection of Palmer and Richmond Streets, he gave Walter 25 cents and recommended him to head to the store on the corner, where fireworks are sold. While he was making his purchase, the kidnappers set off with Charlie. And when Walter came out of the store, he began to cry when he realized that he was left alone. Among the sympathizers who gathered around him was Mr. Henry Pickwick, who finally returned him to his father. Several people were found who saw the carriage pass by when both boys were in it, but no one was found who witnessed its passage after Walter left it. And no trace of the horse or carriage can be found. The motive for the kidnapping was not clear at first, and several theories have been proposed. Some claimed that family problems had prompted a relative to kidnap a favorite child. Others said that he fell into the hands of gypsies, while some expressed the opinion that the child is simply hidden by Mr. Ross for the purpose of gaining fame. On July 3, Mr. Ross received a letter that was sent from Philadelphia. The message was as follows. July 3, Mr. Ross, don't worry, your son Charlie is fine. We have your son and there is no force on earth that can get him out of here. You must pay us before you can get it back, and pay a large amount too. If you involve the police in the search for him, you only weaken your chances. We have your son hidden in such a way that no living force can get to him. If his hiding place is approached, it is a signal to kill him immediately. If you care about his life, don't make anyone look for him. Your money can bring him out alive and no other forces exist. Do not delude yourself and think that the investigators can get it back from us, because that is impossible. We will get back to you in a few days. When the contents of this letter became public, the officials decided that strict methods should be used. Not only in Philadelphia, but throughout the country within a circle stretching for several miles around that city. A search operation unprecedented in scale and comprehensiveness was initiated by American police officials. The discontent of the people in that area became so intense that the officers felt safe ignoring the legal details related to the inspection of private property. Any place whose occupants they did not know above suspicion was searched, and any protest caused officials and neighbors to look at the protester with suspicion. Similarly, the ships in the river were examined, but no trace of the missing child was found, although a thorough search resulted in the recovery of a huge amount of stolen property. And the thieves were subsequently prosecuted. Meanwhile, parents, especially from the wealthy class, became so terrified that they brought their children into a state of semi-detention. On July 6, Mr. Ross received a second letter, also sent from Philadelphia, in which the kidnappers demanded a ransom of $20,000 and threatened to kill Charlie if investigators were called or if their demand was not complied with. The letter also stated that if Mr. Ross wanted to communicate with his child's captors, he should enter a personal ad in the Philadelphia Ledger as follows: Ross, we are ready to negotiate. On July 7, Ross responded as requested, and on the same day another letter was addressed to him asking him to state in a personal announcement whether he would accept the terms. Then it was decided to continue replying to the letters and formulate the answers in such a way that further correspondence was required. Since the hope was that eventually something would be revealed that could help track the child, or make a mistake that would lead to the discovery of the writer. Accordingly, the answer to the last letter was, Ross will accept the conditions to the best of his ability. Also read, the story of Marvin Clark, the oldest disappearance in the history of the United States. On July 9, I wrote another letter in response to the last personal ad, in which the hijackers stated that they were starting to get bored and the reason for the evasive answer was obvious to them. Despite the tone of the last letter from the kidnappers, Ross continued to publish ambiguous responses. After which he announced that he would not add a crime by paying money to the monsters who committed this heinous crime. But when Ross noticed the psychological and physical condition of his wife, he regretted the position he had taken and, through personal columns in the Ledger newspaper, expressed a desire to reopen negotiations, which led to a response from the kidnappers, who reproached him for his impulsive and imprudent actions. On July 22, the mayor of Philadelphia, Stokely, on behalf of several other citizens, offered a reward of $20,000 for the capture of the kidnappers. On the same day, Ross informed the kidnappers, through the usual channels, that he would comply with their requests in all their details. In response, the hijackers expressed their reluctance to enter into any further negotiations at that time, as they claimed that the moon was not at a favorable stage for conducting business transactions. On July 30, the kidnappers asked Ross to get a suitcase and, after painting it white, put $20,000 of small banknotes in it, and take the train to New York at midnight. He was directed to stand on the rear platform of the last car. This train was scheduled to arrive in New York about an hour after sunrise. He was warned to be vigilant from the moment the train left the station, and if he saw a torch and a white flag waving at night near the tracks or a white flag alone in the daytime, he should immediately throw away the bag, and if it was found containing the required money, the child would return home in 10 hours. Ross got the bag and started his journey, but instead of $20,000, the bag contained a letter in which he stated that he would not pay the money until he saw his child in front of him. He took his position on the back car and made the entire exhausting journey, but did not see any sign and returned home, where he found a letter from the kidnappers criticizing him for not making the trip. Apparently, one of the newspapers mistakenly reported that Ross had gone in another direction with some officers to follow some lead, and the kidnappers, believing that this information came from a reliable source, abandoned their plans. Since the moon did not appear on the appointed night, it is likely that they were waiting for a dark night so that they could not be traced. And the reason for painting the bag white was that it could be easily found that night. Communication came up again, but Ross categorically emphasized that the payment of money and the delivery of the baby should be carried out simultaneously. The response to this was sent by mail from New York. The kidnappers stated that a simultaneous exchange was impossible, and again threatened to kill the child. On August 2, New York Police Chief George Walling sent a telegram to Philadelphia asking for the original letters from the kidnappers, adding that he had reliable information about their identity. Captain Haynes of the Philadelphia Police headed to New York with the necessary papers, and Walling's chief source identified the writing as belonging to William Mosher, also known as Johnson. The source then stated that in April 1874, Mosher and Joseph Douglas, also known as Clark, tried to convince him to participate in the kidnapping of one of the Vanderbilt children while the child was playing in the park surrounding the family residence in Throgs Neck, Long Island. The child was to be detained until a ransom of $50,000 was obtained. The source part of the conspiracy was to take the child on a small boat and keep him in isolation until the money was received, but he refused to join the conspiracy. He gave an accurate description of the two men, and when he described some small characteristics about them that were not published, but Walter Ross easily recovered when questioned more closely. It was agreed that the information was of great value. It was then learned that Mosher was a boat builder and was a fugitive from justice at that time. In 1871, he was arrested for burglary in Freehold, New Jersey, but escaped from prison before his trial. After his escape, he and Douglas manufactured a moth protection product called Mothit, and traveled around the country with a horse and cart while marketing the product. At the time of the kidnapping, Mosher was staying with his wife and 4 children at 235 Monroe Street, Philadelphia, and Douglas was staying in the same house. They had a horse and carriage in a stable on Marion Road. But the stable was demolished and the horse and carriage disappeared, which was undoubtedly the one with which Charlie Ross was transported about the time of the kidnapping. On August 19, Douglas, Mosher, and his family moved to New York, where Mosher had a brother-in-law named William Westervelt, a former police officer of that city. At this time, the Pinkron Agency was called in to investigate the case, and every effort was made to catch these two men, but with no progress made. By November 6, Mr. Ross, who was in constant contact with the kidnappers, replied to their 23rd and last letter, which asked him to send 2 of his relatives to New York with the required money, and announced 2 days earlier via the personal ads column of the New York Herald about when they would come. With the personal message reading, Saul of Tarsus, 5th Avenue Hotel immediate. They also warned Ross to instruct his relatives not to leave their hotel room for one moment that day. They explained that the person who will come to receive the financial package will be completely ignorant of its contents or the purpose of its use, and emphasized that under no circumstances should relatives talk to him. They also stated that the route he would take with the money had been carefully planned so that it would be impossible to trace it without their knowledge, and if it was traced, they would kill the child and escape. If the Russians stick to the plan, they will return the baby in 10 hours. Ross finally decided to act in good faith with them, and on November 15, the following advertisement appeared in the New York Herald. Saul of Tarsus, 5th Avenue Hotel, Wednesday, 18, all day. On the 17th of the same month, Mrs. Ross's brother and nephew left with the money and followed the instructions, but no one showed up to pick it up. This was the last step taken to negotiate with the kidnappers, and Mr. and Mrs. Ross, who had been in a state of physical breakdown for several months, were on the verge of a mental breakdown when they found out about the result of the flight. Despite their bold appearance, subsequent events proved that the kidnappers knew that the police were actively pursuing them and did not dare to come out of hiding, even for $20,000. Although they were on the verge of starvation. At this time, many wealthy New Yorkers owned summer homes in Bay Ridge, located on the eastern side of the upper New York Bay. In this area, H. was. Van Brunt owned his permanent home, and his brother's neighbor, Justice Van Brunt of the New York Supreme Court, had his summer home. During the winter, the judge was closing this house, which was connected by an alarm system against thefts, to his brother's house. At 2 o'clock in the morning of December 14, 1874, alarm bells began to sound heavily, which woke up the family of the judge's brother. Mr. Van Brunt thought that the wind might have opened a curtain, causing the alarm to sound, so he ordered his son Albert to check it out. While the son advanced only a few steps, he noticed a person moving around his uncle's house with a lighted candle. He hurriedly returned to his father to tell him this news, who immediately got dressed. Meanwhile, 2 hired men named William Scott and Herman Frank are awakened. The 4 men got hunting rifles and pistols and drove to the house, where 2 men were located at the front entrance and 2 men at the back entrance. It was a cold, dark, and rainy night, but the guys waited patiently for almost an hour. Finally, dark shadows of 2 men were seen quietly sneaking out of the cellar at the back. The appeal of Van Brunt, Sr., known as Halt, was met with 2 shots fired, but fortunately did not cause any damage. Van Brunt then poured the contents of his rifle into the first man, who fell with a cry of pain. After that, the second man shot Van Brunt, but luck smiled at him again. Thief number 2 tried to escape by running forward, where he was confronted by Van Brunt Jr. Here a fight broke out, as a result of which Thief No. 2 fell dead with a bullet in his body. The thief in the back, although he was almost collapsed, continued to shoot as long as he had ammunition. The shooting completely aroused the attention of the neighborhood, and when Thief No. 1 realized that he had only a few moments left to live, he asked for a drink of water, and between his ragged breaths made the following statement. "Guys, I'm not going to lie to you. My name is Joseph Douglas and the man there is William Mosier. He lives in New York. I have no home. I am single and have no relatives except a brother and sister whom I have not seen for 12 years. Mosier is married and has 4 children. I have $40 in my pocket that I got in an honest way. Bury me with it." After another pause he continued, "Guys, I'm dying now and there's no point in lying. Mosier and I were kidnapped by Charlie Ross." Then he was asked why the child was kidnapped, to which he replied, "To earn money." Then he was asked who was responsible for Charlie Ross, to which he replied, "Mosier knows everything about the boy, ask him." He was then informed that Mosier was dead. And to prove this the latter's body was dragged to where Douglas was lying and a light was placed near the dead man's face. Douglas, who was getting weaker with every minute, whispered with difficulty, "God, help his poor wife and family." He then added, "Chief Walling knows everything about us and has been looking for us, and now he has what he wants. The child will return home safely in a few days." Although it was raining heavily and the dying man was soaked to the bone, he begged them not to move him or force him to speak, so an umbrella was brought and carried over him. For more than an hour, he writhed in pain. He finally lost consciousness, and 15 minutes later, he died. Walling's superior was informed, and Detective Selleck, who had known Mosier and Douglas since childhood, was sent to identify the bodies. Selleck recognized them immediately, and when there was a glove on one of Mosier's hands, he said, "Take that off and you'll find a finger cut off due to the removal of an abscess years ago." The glove was removed and there was the severed finger. In order not to be influenced in any way by the young Walter Ross, he was not informed about the tragic incident, but was taken to New York for some reason unknown to him. When the bodies were shown to him, he immediately recognized Mosier's remains as those of the man who drove the wagon, and when Douglas's remains were shown to him, he said that he was the man who gave them candy. Peter Callahan, who saw the children in the carriage with the men, identified the remains of the bodies. Then Mrs. Mosier was found, and although she admitted that she was aware that her husband had kidnapped Charlie Ross, she insisted that she did not know where he was. After that, Mr. Ross issued a post in which he stated that he was sure that the leaders in the kidnapping plot had been killed. that he did not want to go after the parties who were holding his child at the time, and that he would offer a reward of $5,000 to anyone who returned his son without asking any questions. On February 25, 1875, the Pennsylvania legislature passed a law defining the crime of kidnapping and fixing the punishment with a fine not exceeding $10,000 and solitary confinement for no more than 25 years. But it was specially stipulated that if a person who had a kidnapped child returned this child to the nearest sheriff or judge before March 25, 1875, such persons would be immune from punishment. Although the law guaranteed protection to anyone who returned this child, and as an additional incentive, the father offered a reward of $5,000, the child was never seen again. It is assumed that he died. Mr. Ross believed that his son was still alive, but the main reason why he came to this conclusion was that Westervelt, Mosher's brother, told him that he had spoken with Douglas the day before the latter's death. And Douglas had mentioned that Mosher was at that time arranging plans for the simultaneous exchange of the child and ransom. Mr. Ross attached great importance to Westervelt's statement. Although Walling's boss repeatedly stated that he had irrefutable evidence that the former police officer was helping the kidnappers instead of the authorities. Since the boy could intelligently talk about his home surroundings, and according to the kidnappers' letters to Mr. Ross, he constantly asked them to take him home to be able to accompany his mother to the countryside, it was considered likely that if the boy was still alive, he would eventually have the opportunity to disclose his identity to someone to bring him home if he was alive, as this case attracted the attention of the whole world.
Thank you for tuning in to our channel, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature and unravel the mysteries behind the most notorious crimes. We hope our stories have captivated your interest. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated with our latest content. Stay vigilant, and remember, the truth is often stranger than fiction. Until next time.